Excited for another episode of the Overnight Success Podcast. This is going to be a little bit different today. We are wrapping up season 3. So, John and I are going to share where we're going next. We're going to highlight what systems and AI and even some common themes that we learned this season and how we want to bring that into the next season. With that being said, we realized some really interesting things as we talked to these founders this season. And every story was obviously different, and we wanted to hear those success stories of founders, but the patterns were pretty similar. And it completely changed how we're thinking about growth here at the optimization specialist with systems and what actually scales. And so we're going to take a step back so that we can break down what we saw, what we learned, and where we want to go to next. So, John, thank you for joining me today. Excited to hop in and kind of not only recap, but like highlight what's next.
Yeah, and kinda going back to what you said, it was an interesting season. I mean, 1, it's hard to believe that we're already through it, but, 2, I think there's obviously a lot of inspirational stories in there, a lot of people very, courageous or brave people, right? A lot of them made some serious leaps, but if you look at the undertones there, it was a team or the systems in place that kinda got them to where they were. A lot of blind trust, but, definitely systems in there that got them there. And I think we'll talk about that today. We'll talk about a little bit of what we've been doing over the last 3 months, how our systems have kind of improved. And of course, talking about AI because it's everywhere and how we are able to use that within systems, not just for generating email content or marketing content.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this one. Again, it'll be a little bit different, but what we realized is in some of those common themes is like we hit these ceilings and there's like this growth complexity that starts to create different pressures. And without real systems in place, it turns into chaos. And so we'll dive into some of the stories. Obviously, we encourage everyone to go back and listen to the episodes. The founders that we interviewed this season and season past have been really profound in how they've scaled and how they've shown up. And a big thing, some of those common themes we're pushing through and persevering, right? Having that grit. But also, I just want to highlight a few with like Maria with Hess Street Foods. She talked a lot about how it just takes time and you have to kind of push through those barriers. And her business was built when she was working alongside community and other people and really leaning into how she trusted the process, right? And I think I heard that a lot throughout a lot of the founder stories, but I just want to iterate like things take time to build, and being clear and being niched in on that has been something that I heard a lot come through each episode as well.
Yeah, the sticking with it or, it takes time. I think in today's world that's difficult. I know as AI has come to become a sidekick, I guess you could say, I feel like my patience has shortened or my expectations for like that instant gratification has increased. So I think systems can help increase things, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? Funny that we call this overnight success. All of these people did take time to build their businesses, but it can shorten that the time it takes to get there, right? Because if you're stuck in the business, or you're stuck kind of spinning your wheels and you can't grow, like that's painful. But just because you have a great system in place doesn't mean that you get to triple your sales over 3 months or anything like that. But I think that definitely stuck through with a lot of the people of realizing whether they started in corporate and stepped into the entrepreneurship world, or they had a couple of different businesses that didn't quite make it. The ones that they did turn into those success stories, they had to stick with for a long time and constant iteration through different systems, different people, just trying and experimenting. That's my favorite part of entrepreneurship. I think that's honestly like that's why I'm so attracted to it. It's great that we get to experiment. Some things work, some things don't. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it's a failure. It's just you need to try something different.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about the AI in just a few minutes after we kind of talk and highlight some of these past stories, because I think to your point, AI has really changed the game and what systems and what people think systems are and how you can still leverage AI in the wrong way, right? And so we'll get a little deeper into that in just a moment. But I also want to talk about we talk a little bit about systems and time, community, but growth creating additional problems. A lot of the founders kind of touched on that. They kept hitting these ceilings and they didn't know exactly what the problems were that they were going to face. But they grew, things didn't always get easier. And one of my favorite questions when we're looking at like bottlenecks is, if you were to bring in 100 new clients tomorrow, what would happen, right? And ultimately, a lot of those systems break, and growing isn't just putting systems in place. It's having the right systems, but growing also exposes the things that are not working in the company. And I think when we looked at these stories that we heard this season, a lot of them talked about how they had to kind of break things and move fast. They had to iterate and kind of create new pathways for um, what things that they didn't even know, right? They kept getting to the top of the peak and thinking, "Oh, we made it." And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh no, there's another peak and it's bigger once I got to the top there." So I thought that was also really interesting.
Yeah, and I think the hardest balance for me, or the hardest thing to judge, is, do I need more people or do I need better systems? Right? Systems take time, sometimes money, to purchase certain software. People definitely cost time and money. And so sometimes you have to figure out, like, do I just need to dial these systems a little bit more and get a little bit of extra energy out of the team that I have? Or do I need to invest in a new person? I feel you also don't want to just invest in new people without new systems, right? Those are going to evolve over time too. But that is always the biggest challenge I think a lot of business owners deal with, and getting the right people is a big part of that, and making sure that they understand what their role is in the company. And I think a couple of our guests did talk about how good people and bad people, right? And that they learned along the way. And I know we're both Gary Vaynerchuk fans, and he talks a lot about kind of like firing fast, right? I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I think that is part of being a business owner. You can't make best friends with every single person on your team, but you do want to make sure that you create a great atmosphere so that they're ready to thrive, versus having all of these bottlenecks and just micromanaging. So I think putting those together will help you scale and create that overnight success.
Yeah, I agree. And a big thing too, you kind of touched on it. I want to double down on that is, as the business owner, we're creating the boat and we're trying to get the right people into the boat. And if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, that becomes a problem, right? And if they don't know which way to be rowing the boat because you're not giving the clear vision. So it's like, as the business owner helps them create this bigger growth, and they're bringing in more people or more systems, being clear on what they're supposed to be doing has been also really clear in the episodes that we recorded. And that kind of pivots me over to another thought that I saw a common theme of is, the owner can become the bottleneck, right? This was probably the most consistent thing and pattern that we saw in every single episode, because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And at a certain point, certain things will start falling through the cracks. And it's because a lot of times everything has to route through the founder and or the business owner. And what we want to realize is that that's not really a scalable model, right? And how do we grow and how do we make decisions more quickly? I think in just a few minutes we'll talk more about how AI and systems and operations can help with that. But also, you want to make sure they're the right things, right? And so if you're trying to offload something or your process isn't clearly documented, then how does the next person know how to do the thing? And so there's kind of this Mm, reiterate, and it's almost like a flywheel, right? And I kept seeing that as these founders have found quote unquote overnight success. At one point, they were the bottleneck, and then they grew past it, and then they became the bottleneck again because they didn't know what they didn't know. But the cool thing was is that they persevered through it.
Yeah, and like when you are scaling a business, especially when you were the only person on the team or one of just, two or three people, who you have the most experience. Like, you got there through all of pushing through, and all the grit and everything. So one, like, how do you immediately train somebody else to do that? Like, that's a hard piece. And when you're still in the middle of it, how do you find the time to train somebody? But if you don't, then like that's where a lot of those bottlenecks or ceilings, whichever analogy you want to use, come into play. And I think once those owners got out of their own way, they, whether it was SOPs or just hiring the right person, systems, like, all those different things, that's where they're able to step back and actually run the business versus let the business run them.
Yeah, that was definitely a big theme. And, one of the episodes we did was a little bit different. We talked a lot about mindset. So Eileen brought in a lot of mindset thought here. And she talked a lot about clarity and decision making and how do we realize what we're supposed to be doing, right? And we're not really stuck because we don't know what to do. Mel Robbins also talks about it's like we know what to do, but we don't know how to do it necessarily. And I think that's where community comes into play. And that's where trusting yourself and doing that aligns with understanding the bigger vision. And hey, I'm in this boat, right? And I've got a team with me, or I've got my systems and they're building and we're scaling. And we know we're trying to get over to whatever point or destination that is. And we're on that journey. And so we're not really stuck because this came through in this particular episode is we're not really stuck because we don't know what to do. It's because we're not confident enough to make that decision. And so, a big theme that I saw in every episode is these founders executed, right? And they took action, which is one of the biggest things I've seen, not only through our podcast, but through other founders. And probably could call myself out here is like, you know, analysis paralysis. Oh my gosh, there's so
Mhm.
much we can do, but what do we do first? It's like just do something, right? And move forward because once that's done, then you can move to the next thing. And so I think a lot of clarity comes through decision making. I heard that as a common theme through a lot of the episodes, but I feel like Eileen explicitly pulled that out.
Yeah, and I think back to like as you're scaling, so you're all of that's going through your head. Oh, and also you have to finish the client project that you promised or go close that sales deal that or that sales call that's happening in 5 minutes. And so it's very difficult to really future vision when you are stuck in that rat race type deal, right? Or that hamster wheel. So I think putting that in place, getting the right people, whether it's you schedule time in the future to, I've heard a lot of times a founder almost takes like a week off. Admittedly, it's not a vacation. It's more or less, I'm not going to be doing client work. I'm going to be doing visioning work, right? Like every quarter, for instance, you and I, we do these 2 hour sessions where we're sitting down, reviewing the previous quarter, looking at the next quarter, figuring out what worked, what didn't. And like, those are some of my favorite meetings that we have. But they take energy to prep for, and then they have a lot of action items after the fact. So we're basically getting together for 2 hours to create more work for ourselves. But that is how we have gone to, that is how we've grown to where we are today. It has changed our systems, which we'll talk about here shortly, of some of the ways that we're using AI and how we're working, remotely. We haven't done the math on how many hundreds of miles away we are from each other, but, being able to work side by side virtually and accomplish things at all throughout the day.
Yeah. And I love that you brought in our meeting cadence because I do believe that that has helped us scale because it is a system, right? And there's different meetings that we hold and this wasn't necessarily in the podcast, but I think it's important as we talk about systems is I know in season 2 we talked about EOS with Keyhart Marketing, Jen Keyhart. She brought this in and she uses EOS and we have clients that use EOS and we use an EOS light version, right? And that's the system that you're talking about. And when we look at that, yes, we've pivoted along the way and we've kind of used those models to help us scale bigger. And I think this is where everything really starts to connect. And having those systems, whether you use that one or another one, is like there's a bigger goal at mind, but then we're executing for the clients and we're proving our value so that we can continue to scale to bigger projects, right? And when we really zoom out across all of our conversations, I think that a theme that I heard was that founders are putting systems in place. They're not overthinking their actions and they're starting to really show up in an authentic way that is aligned with the mission of their company. And so they're creating these systems to remove the chaos and break through those ceilings. And it really turns from like as we look at these overnight successes, a lot of them started, the whole concept is like it was a side hustle, and then they brought it to 6, 7 figures, and that's doable, but a lot of it has to do with structure and really being intentional about the time in the day, right? And when we look at, some of our favorite influencers, they're constantly saying, like, kind of take action and do the thing. And, there's so many pieces I can dive into there, but like I'll leave those for go listen to the episodes because I think that they really talk through how they got there, what that looked like, the struggles, the tribulations, the quote unquote overnight success. So yeah, I think ultimately what I heard as a common theme in this season was build the systems and execute. And being clear on the vision of what the bigger goals are for whatever company you're trying to grow, right? From hot dog stands to cat litter boxes to coaching companies, right? Like we had to CPG, which is our consumer goods, and there were so many different insights here, but the biggest piece was they executed because they believed that they were solving a problem.
Yeah, they took the leap. Like I said, that blind trust kind of came into play. That's they weren't held back by that analysis paralysis, and then they learned along the way. And I think that that's the biggest thing. And I'll get a little bit on that mindfulness train here. I know for me, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but there's my favorite stories are people that went through adversity and then were able to grow. And I think Ed Milet's kind of talked about this. Like he's grateful for some of his adversity because if he had a very cushy life, then he probably wouldn't have had the confidence to go try and do the hard thing. And there's times where I look, it's like that scares the crap out of me. And like I don't know if I'm willing to do this, but then somebody's able to remind me, like, look at all these other things you've gone through. It's a lot easier to remember the things that you failed at than the things that you succeeded at. And so people have to sometimes point out to me, like, John, like, you did this, this, and that. Like, why are you worried about this little thing? But sometimes, like, when your reality's changed and you're looking at it, it looks like this huge thing, but because you forget where you've come from. So I think that was one thing about that. Like, that's why I like this podcast where we get to listen to these different founders. We help them reflect on that because some of them are so focused on the future. I'm one of them. I'm always from here forward, never really looking back. But we have to realize how far we've come, and that really helps build a more confident future.
I love that. And so let's shift a little bit here. Let's talk about as we're looking toward the future, right? Where are we going next with this podcast and how can we highlight some of those systems and even AI? AI has transformed. We've talked about AI and some of our co-founder combos in the past, but probably since then those are even outdated, right? Like there's been so much evolution of it and how we have leveraged it in our own business, but also where we're going with that. So I'm gonna turn it to you, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a lot about systems, but that was like more like the undertone or just kind of like the hidden pieces in the past conversations. But we realize now, especially with all the technology changes, there's some businesses out there that know I need to be using AI, but how do I use it for more than email content or social media content? And so I think that's where we really want to start digging in a little bit more. Um, there's the super complex technical stuff where people have 25 agents basically running their business for them. And then there's something a little bit more, I think, achievable in the small business world or the scaling business world, where they're just using AI with in the middle of their workflows. And I think it would be good to kind of talk about how we've changed that a little bit. And we were trying to go, it's funny back to like not looking back. I was like, oh, that's right. We did build that over the last couple months. And like, this is helping us in certain ways. And so we'll create a video on this at some point to actually like show how it works. But for me, one of my favorite systems that we've built lately is our discovery call system. So as we have been scaling, there's more and more discovery calls happening that you're going on, Christy, and you've been amazing. And you come from the operational side and you can understand the pain points. But there's always that technical question of like, is this possible? And I love your confidence in me sometimes, but there are some things that we can't always check all the boxes.
I'm like, John's a
You're like,
wizard.
I'll have to ask John. And so the nice thing is, I mean, AI transcription is nothing new now, right? Like we had Fathom for a while now. Since we have Google Workspace, Gemini listens into it. It's great because we both have access to the recordings immediately and then go in. But when we upload that to a custom GBT, I basically created this entire prompt that extracts anything that I need to know as the technical implementer and highlights everything and turns it into an amazing HTML report. And so my favorite and we built that into our CRM, right? So you've uploaded some links, you upload the report. I get a notification when you've uploaded all of that. I can go view it, and it basically tells me what I need to know. It even gives it a scoring. Essentially, it's like how difficult would this be to implement, and any questions that I have to go do, or the feasibility. Does this have APIs and things like that? And these are sometimes the things that if I'm on a discovery call with you, I'm kind of searching on my screen in the meantime. But even if I was on the call with you now, this kind of does it for me, which has been amazing. And so, yes, it took a little bit of time to implement. And, I worked with ChatGPT to create the prompt and like, what should I put in here? But we dialed it in to get the output. And so now you're able to go on and ask everything from your perspective. You have an understanding of kind of the questions I want, but anything that you highlight, this is a question for John. The prompt picks that up in the transcript and makes sure it highlights it. It gives me timestamps. It's been amazing because I had questions for you. It's like, oh, I wish I would have asked that. Or, you couldn't quite remember because you were on a 60-minute discovery call. And so I think that is an amazing system of how it's still generative AI of taking a transcript and doing things, but it allows you to have a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning and for me to get the cliff notes that I need to understand so we can have a proposal together by the end of the day. And like, that's a huge value add because before it was, well, when can you meet John so I can go over this with you, or those different pieces, or I'm having a conversation back and forth with ChatGPT just to kind of ask it 5 different questions. So now the prompt puts that all together in a report. And I think that is the way that a lot of AI and systems is going, of taking generative AI but putting it into those workflows so it spits out the information you need to have at your fingertips more than just creating content.
100%. And from where I sit, the chatter I hear a lot of is AI is taking over our jobs. And I'm like, no, it in this particular instance right now, it's actually making our organization more powerful and robust for our potential clients who we know that if we can turn around things more quickly, it's not doing the job for us. Like we still have to educate it and knowledgeably prompt it. And I can't just sit out here on a call and be like, all right, tell me the thing and we'll figure it out later. Like, no, I'm asking it the question. I'm asking on the other side of the call, like, tell me their pain points and let me understand what's going on. Right. And I do ask some of those technical questions, but I am by no means able to ask some of the questions that you do know. And I think that it's been really neat to see. Again, this is something that we implemented this quarter, how it has changed how we can turn around proposals more quickly and how I actually can be more confident on a discovery call and say, "Oh, I'll get back to you within 24 hours with a proposal." I already know like this technology, this AI that we're leveraging is going to help me answer some of these questions I don't know based on not only the questions I'm asking, but the additional prompts that you've layered in there. And then if something's still not clear, it's, hey, John, you got 5 minutes, right? It's not, hey, we need 60 minutes to watch the whole video. Then we need another 60 minutes to talk about the call. It's, no, we're ready to execute more quickly. And so I think it's helped us make decisions much more quickly. Um, and I don't see it as taking over our job. I see it as helping us help our customers more quickly, more efficiently, and overall, like better.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the other place that I think AI comes into play is reports. Now, sometimes reporting is more of a static object, but now that all these different services are allowing AI to essentially query their data, every morning you can have a new report for yourself using AI that connects to it. And you don't have to understand a whole lot for it. Claude Code has come in a great play where basically it's like, I want to be able to query Monday.com for all of the tasks that have updated in the last week. And you give me a summary of what's going on, identify anything that might be problematic or any themes. And it knows and understands the system well enough. It's like, well, I need to go and search through these 6 boards, see what their last updated date was, see if I can identify any themes of this information, and then it puts it into like this nice HTML report. So at the executive level, they can see information that they need. Or if you just want to understand what's going on within your business without building all these crazy dashboards that are pretty powerful, like we use Monday dashboards a lot, and we've built other dashboards out, but sometimes you're still kind of limited to the scope of what they have. Now this can pull information from multiple locations, right? It can sync the information from your CRM with your project management system and build an amazing looking report that looks good to anybody, right? And so that's kind of nice versus saying, hey, if you want to see this dashboard, you have to log into Monday.com, click here, click here, click here. And like, still think that's valuable. But with AI, it's really bringing all the reporting together and you don't need as much information. And it's giving you that feedback with kind of that human tone. So dashboards typically are just numbers and charts, which tell a story, and you have to understand what those numbers and charts mean. We've all seen those slide decks that pop up, and it's like, what am I looking at right here? Right. But with AI, it's going to take that and actually give you an explanation and give you more like summaries or the summaries or reviews of, hey, here's the information. I noticed that your time to close is starting to decrease over the last piece, right? And that shows on a chart, right? You might see that on a line chart, but like having a human sentence, well, AI sentence, whatever you want to say, an English readable sentence on a page that kind of calls that out is really powerful. And on the flip side, being in development in the past, it's really good because if you let AI kind of call people out or highlight the challenges, you are just the delivery of that information, and the AI is going through and like is basically asking as like a scrum master for anybody that's familiar with software development. So it's been really good to create different things like that that goes through, sifts through the data, and that can be run daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you need.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so I think with that in mind is, this podcast has served a great purpose and it's not going away, but we are intentionally pausing. Again, we do by seasons. And so this is kind of the conclusion of this season. And before we wrap up, John, I'd ask you, is there anything else you want to highlight for systems or AI or, this season in general?
Yeah, I think in a world of AI where people are kind of nervous about it taking over and taking jobs, I think people need to understand how to utilize it. And I'm repeating what a lot of other experts are saying out there. Obviously, that's not new news, but being able to use it in your systems, you don't have to figure out how to create these open claw crazy agents that run your business for you, but it's making sure that you're using the tools in the right way to give you that advantage and continue scaling your business, right? There's new ways to be creative with it. I know there's concerns in the marketing world of it being able to create it, but marketers can still take this and like one up their value that they used to provide. They were the only way that they could provide value a couple years ago, right? Because like AI could not create this content. So now AI can kind of create this content. So how do they reuse this to keep growing? And so I think those systems going to come into place are good, making sure your team is on page with it, making sure they understand what they should be using AI for, what they shouldn't be using it for. These are all conversations to be had. Experiment in your free time, experiment if you're an owner, you can experiment on work time, but continue experimenting and staying up to speed. You don't have to be in the top 1%, but be in the top 30% of AI power users and understand how you can use that for your day to day.
Yeah, I'll echo a little bit on that too. Your AI is only as smart as you kind of allow it to be. And yes, AI is smart, but if you're asking it to build a system for your company or a workflow, and you don't tell it what you do or how to do it, or if you haven't prompted it in the proper way, like it's not going to necessarily make the right workflows. It doesn't know your business inside and out. And so AI is here to stay. And I don't think a surprise to anybody. But to your point is let's continue to learn how to leverage it, right? Let's not fall behind. And that's one thing that we're kind of promising our audience is that we are going to leverage it in an ethical, honest way of how do we give this back to our clients and how do we give this, how do we continue to learn in the marketplace as well? And so, we started this podcast to tell founders stories. And what we've realized is the real value is when we start breaking down how those businesses and what actually make those businesses work. And so, our goal is to help founders continue to scale. And the best founders out there aren't the ones who are necessarily working the hardest. They're the ones that actually built the systems that support their growth and understand that's an iterative process, right? You mentioned we have quarterly meetings. This was kind of a goal for us. Like, how do we make sure that as I go full time in this, that we're not the bottleneck in these discovery calls? And how do I continue to add that value when we're getting on more calls, but you're still busy? And how do we, right? And so this was a goal we set. And what's the next goal? We're going to figure that out as we build. And so moving forward, we want to continue to focus on what is quote unquote overnight success. We know that's not the reality, that's never the case, but it's the hard work and the grit, right? But we're going to focus on systems and workflows and AI and how founders actually implement what they've been learning, because I think there's been such a big movement in the last, I don't, you can call it days or you can call it couple of years, right? Like every day it's changing. And so excited for that. And we'll definitely come back with a strong season. Season 4 will be going live probably end of summer. So we're gonna re-highlight some other episodes and continue to scale our company as well and learn how to give back in this community.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is the stuff that I kind of nerd out over, so I'm really excited that we can kind of make that small pivot. I think we're still going to hear amazing stories from amazing business owners that have scaled their business, but we're going to learn a little bit more behind the scenes, not just the people side, but really like those systems. And there's going to be, well, I'm really hoping to get some guests on here that have taken AI to the next level, and like I'll actually be learning from them, which would be really good, so that way we can share that with our audience and they can find small things that they can do. I don't want to bring the experts on here that can code 20 hours a day and create these amazing systems that might be kind of fun for me to nerd out on. But I want to make sure that we're bringing people in that have the practical systems that almost anybody can implement, whether it is just like a simple discovery call system like ours, or something in those lines that says, hey, if you ask ChatGPT to do this thing or Claude Code or these small kind of out of the box AI tools, and then how can that help you scale your business?
100%. Well, John, anything else to add today?
No, I think that's it. I'm looking forward to another season. Hope everybody has an amazing end of school season here and summer, and we'll be coming back with some fun new content at the end of the summer.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.